This is the Sunday after a community fish fry last week. And so just as a lead-in, I wanted to give you a little bit of a by the numbers for this week's fish fry. So, Rebecca, can I get that graphic up there? So here's just like a tail of the tape, if you will. So we spent 3 hours in the park. Now, you know what? That does not compare to the gajillion hours that were spent in this building preparing and, like, cutting fish and out at the camp loading stuff up. So 3 hours in the park is the best calculation, but there were tons and tons of hours that were spent other places. Our best number for volunteers, it's you guys who helped in some way, is 110 with about 30 first-time volunteers. Woo! So that's really impressive. I won't embarrass anyone who was a first-time volunteer, but you know if you were, and we're really glad that you were able to be a part of what God did last Sunday. And then we figured there was approximately 700 fish dinners served in the park last Sunday. So you might wonder how we get that number. Sometimes we base it on plates, but this year we actually based it on pounds of fish served. So that was the number of calculation we got there. It's really incredible, isn't it? Like the people that you see come to the fish fry who maybe we wouldn't see on a Sunday morning, or not just wouldn't see on a Sunday morning, but So I've lived in Titusville my whole life, and I think I've probably seen every human being that lives in Titusville, right? Like, that's what we all assume because we've just been here forever. I'm like, I've never seen that person in my whole life, and yet here they are in the park with us, enjoying a fish dinner and getting to hear the gospel shared from the gazebo and getting to hear getting this opportunity to have conversations with people and pray for people. So those are the numbers, but one thing I want to highlight is Tyler did a very excellent job organizing us all in the lead to the fish fry. So would you give Tyler this? I mean, I would do that, but I think I'm done now.
Are you? Okay. All right. Well, I hope we might. Yeah, I was getting ready to chant Tyler's name, but yeah, he's wincing at that idea. We wanted to give anyone an opportunity to share this morning that was a part of the fish fry in any way. If there was a story you'd like to share, or an observation that you made, or just a thought that you had about it, anything at all, if you would like to share in conjunction to the fish fry. We want you to take that moment now, and to do that, we actually, so I know this is hard for some of you, we would like you to come up on the platform because we do have a significant congregation watching online as well, and we want to care about them. You thought I forgot about you, I know. So we want them to be able to see you and to hear you. So who has something they would like to share as a part of their fish fry experience leading up to, or, yep, anybody? I saw you conniving back there. It's gonna be like an interview.
No, I just said to her, will you walk up with me? She has no idea. Yeah, there was, I guess I want to say, I didn't plan this, okay, so you can tell. It's good to have conversations. It's good to listen. It's good to read between the lines. And we are better together. Always, I always say that. We're better together. God created us to be in community, and we are better together. There was a woman at the fish fry. I was walking among the tables, and I just said to her, everything okay? Do you need anything? And she asked me, does your church do anything with clothing, like give clothing away? And I said, well, several years ago we did that a couple times a year, but we don't right now. And she said, well, my husband died last month, and there's a lot of nice clothes, and I'd like to get them somewhere, where they can be used. I could have just said, oh, sorry, we don't do that, and went on my way. But it struck me, one, just having gone through losing someone and gone through the grief share classes here, like immediately my heart went out to her. This is what she's saying. She's sitting there alone at the fish dinner. She came, even having lost her mom or her husband. Anyway, so I talked to her. I told her a couple other places, another church, another place that maybe she could. And it was kind of hard because she was sitting at the end closest to the speaker, so the music was playing. And I almost left, and then I was like, oh, can I pray with you? And she's like, yes. So I did. I prayed with her, and just not about the clothing, but about the loss. So I don't know. We kind of concluded and left. And then a little bit after that, I saw Linda over at the drink table, and I told her. And she said, well, did you tell her about the grief share classes? And I said, no, I didn't. I said, it was kind of hard. The music was loud there. I said, she's that woman there. I'm going to keep my eye, because when she gets up to leave, then I'll just, walk with her. But next time I looked, she wasn't there. I'd lost her. And I told Linda that, and Linda told me.
I found her. And I sat with her, and we talked about grief share, and we talked about the fact that her husband wasn't necessarily into organized religion. And I said, well, we have a church, and you're welcome to come anytime. So hopefully she'll come. And if she's here today, we're blessed. It was just a blessing to talk to her and speak with her, and it was a blessing that she would share her heart with us. And I had another lady I spoke with as well, and she's special. She had some problems with people she lives with in her little community, and she was upset, and we talked about forgiveness and forgiving friends, and even though you don't always want to, sometimes you need to. Sometimes that's that first step. So those were the things that, the couple of important things that we ran into.
Yeah, beautiful. Tammy, you're really quick.
Well, I wasn't sure what you were going to say next. I just wanted to share that I didn't sign up to volunteer this year because I didn't know what would be happening in my family. Some of you may have read our prayer cards, and I appreciate your praying. But my father did not feel up to going last Sunday, so I showed up by myself. Pastor Tim came up to me and asked me if I was going to get them a to-go box, my parents. And I said yes, and he let me know that he had them on the shut-in list just in case I didn't show up. So I don't know if that total number includes the shut-in list or not, but I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tammy. Okay, anyone else? Marvina from the way back.
Years back, there was a woman and I that got to connect. And so I was praying, Lord, I want to be able to meet her again in case she was there. Well, here I am roaming around the park, and who do I turn? And there she is. I'm like, oh, we hugged, and we were so happy to see each other. But on top of it, it gave an opportunity as she shared about some things that were troubling her, that we got to pray together right there. So that was just a beautiful time in the park.
Yeah. Good. Thanks, Marvina. Okay. Anyone else? You know, I was going to say something. When she first talked about the person that she ran into, does your church give away used clothing? Is that what she said? Yeah. So recently I have taken to praying this prayer, not every day, but most days. I pray that the Lord would give me eyes to see what he sees, to pay attention to what he might be trying to point out to me. I ask him to give me ears so that I could hear his voice and so that I could also hear what people are really saying. I pray that he would give me a mouth that I could actually speak his words. And I pray that he would give me hands through which his mercy can be conveyed to others. Well, this idea of eyes to see what he sees and ears to hear what people are saying, it's just amazing. Like, does your church do a clothing giveaway? Which was another way of saying my husband died 6 months ago. But who's really going to hear that? Unless you're really listening. Unless you have the sensitivity of the Spirit and allowing the Spirit to make you sensitive to what other people are sharing and then actually have an opportunity to minister to them in some way. So, yeah, let me just, anybody else want to share? Let me just say again, we did have a beautiful day. 2 weeks ago, I prayed. We prayed for every area of the volunteers. How many are there areas? 8, something, I don't know. So I prayed, and it's no secret. Because I don't keep it a secret. I don't keep many secrets. It's no secret that what gives me the most anxiety is setting up. That just really, I just have lots of anxiety about it. And I have anxiety about enough people showing up because it's a lot of work, a lot of tables, a lot of chairs, a lot of canopies, just a lot of stuff. And then every year we need to refigure out how the canopies go up because we only put them up once a year. And some things you don't want to do by committee, right? Because everybody on the committee has a different way they want to do it. Case in point, there were 4 of us that were setting up the canopy through which the serving line was going to be. And of course there's, the peak, and you enter under the peak, and which way is it going to be turned? And we just were having a heck of a time because I had it going one way, and the other 3 people that were helping were like doing it backwards, or I was doing it backwards. I don't know, but we were going different directions there, So doing things by committee just can lead to all kinds of difficulties. But and so one of the things I became aware of is. But probably every area is like this. Like, I don't know one single thing about what it takes to get that fish cooked. I volunteer to cut fish, and so we do that the morning before. But those people that were back there mixing batter and frying the fish, there's just things involved there that I don't know how that happens, but it does, because everybody knows their thing. So I'm saying all that just to say that I'm really thankful for 100+ volunteers who, from donating cookies to being in the gazebo, playing their instruments, to frying fish, to setting up and tearing down, and everything that was involved. And for Tyler, just coordinating all of that work and all of that effort is a huge task all by itself. So that's all beautiful. It's really beautiful. So when I think about that, I also think like, man, with that kind of intention, with that kind of faithfulness, that kind of work, and good-hearted work, like everybody that was there are just like good hearts. Like, just feel like there's like why can't we capture Titusville for the kingdom of God? I just think we can. I think we can. So that's part of what part of what I want to share today. Leading up to the fish fry, we were looking at different stories. The series is Over Dinner, right? And so my favorite over dinner story is a parable that Jesus tells twice. 2 different occasions, 2 different variations. It's not exactly the same because it's 2 different audiences at 2 different times. But like, hey man, if you've got a good story, tell it more than once. And this is a good story that he tells. It's a story about a feast, a dinner that's been prepared, and people were invited. It's one of those, first century, different than our century. We send out save the dates. Like we set the date before we're actually ready to, and then people come. Why do we send out invitations after we send out save the dates? Isn't it like the same thing? I don't know. So they're not sending out save the dates. They're sending out save the occasions. Like, hey, we're going to have an occasion, but we don't know when the date is yet. But when everything's ready, we'll let you know, and we want you to come. So save the occasion. And the idea was, like, you just needed to be prepared. When the occasion came, you came, and you dropped everything. So Jesus tells this parable twice about this great feast being prepared. And when in Matthew's gospel, Jesus, it's a great king that gives a wedding feast for his son. And in Luke, it's not that. It's just a man that's having a big dinner in his house. So I love this story. And I mostly want to share Luke's version. So if you want to pay attention to what's going on, this is in Luke 14. So it's really fun that it's in Luke 14. Luke 14 can be overshadowed by Luke 15. So Luke 15 tells the 3 great parables that are all one parable. The story of the lost sheep, the story of the lost coin, and the story of the lost son. So Luke 15 is kind of famous for that, those 3 famous parables. Well, Luke 14 has 3 parables about eating. And the really fun thing about it is Jesus tells these 3 parables about eating, these 3 parables about dinners, while he's at a dinner. So I'm going to share a couple stories about dinners while I'm having dinner. So if you didn't think Jesus was really about eating, you're just not paying attention because here we go. So in Luke 14, verses 1 and 2, this is what it says. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. One Sabbath, he's eating in the house of a prominent Pharisee. So this is like Sunday dinner, right? So they've had synagogue, and synagogue time is over, and Jesus is invited to this Pharisee's house to have Sunday dinner, Sabbath dinner, in his house. And not just any Pharisee, mind you, but a prominent Pharisee. And he was being carefully watched. There in front of him, Jesus, was a man suffering from an abnormal swelling of his body. Some of you might be looking at a translation that says dropsy. He has edema. His limbs, most likely what the writer's describing is his limbs are just swelled with fluid, making their skin tight and making them very uncomfortable. And so that's dropsy, abnormal swelling. And it makes note of the fact that he's suffering. He's suffering. He's having a hard time. He might be sitting at the table, but probably not. So what often happened, apparently, was these dinners were held in courtyards, and there were people that had a place at the table and people that didn't. And the people that didn't have a place at the table would gather. It was a spectacle. And you could eavesdrop on the conversation, which wasn't really eavesdropping so much, was because the people that were gathered at the table wanted to be heard. And we see this happen a couple of times in the Gospels. This is probably one of them. So here's this man that he wasn't invited over to dinner probably, and he probably doesn't have a seat at the table, but he does have an issue. And Jesus can take care of this issue. He can take care of this. But it's the Sabbath. And is it appropriate? Like, should he do something? So they're watching him closely. It's amazing to me. So Jesus asks that question that he asks more than once in the Gospels. Is it lawful or not to heal on the Sabbath? And it's like, yes, it is lawful, but not to prominent Pharisees. It's the Sabbath. Like, that's the day to see healing, because that's the day that represents the coming kingdom in all of its fullness, when everybody's healed and everybody's home free. So they didn't say anything. So it says, taking a hold of the man, he healed him, and he sent him away. Sent him away. So then he shares a couple of stories. First, he shares a story about, hey, when you get invited to a wedding feast, a wedding banquet, and if they don't have a seating chart, you should sit in the back, not in the front. Because if you sit in the front, if you sit at the closed tables, there's a possibility that someone's going to come and say, oh, you're in the wrong seat. And you get escorted to the back, and you're humiliated, and you look bad. And Jesus, like, don't be looking for prominence. He's saying this in the house of a prominent Pharisee. Don't be looking for the seat of prominence. Don't be looking for the seat of prominence. So he tells that story. And then he tells another story. And this starts in verse 12. When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or your relatives, or your rich neighbors. I'm not sure if I have rich neighbors. Don't invite your rich neighbors. You can invite your poor ones, but don't invite your rich neighbors. If you do, they might invite you back, and so you will be repaid. All right, so what Jesus is trying to say here is like, don't be inviting people from whom you can expect some kind of reciprocity, right? So we have these sayings about, people that are important have a seat at the table, right? So that's an expression we use. If you're an important person, you have a seat at the table. And then we talk about people we might want to have a seat at the table, and we would use this expression. They really bring something to the table. And like that's who we want. We want people who really bring something to the table. Jesus says, don't invite those people. No. Invite people who you suspect they don't really have anything to offer. They don't really bring anything to the table. You're not going to benefit from your association with them. You're not going to benefit from this invite. So this is just Jesus' way of turning things around a little bit. Like, you want to invite people just for the sheer heartbeat of wanting them to have a place at the table where they would not be welcomed, or where they would not have been invited. The man who had dropsy probably didn't have a seat at the table. That's who you want to invite. That's who you want to invite. Somebody that might not have been there otherwise. So he elaborates, verse 13. When you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you'll be blessed. This is who to invite. This is who's on your guest list. The poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. People that don't bring much to the table. People who can't pay you back. People for whom there is no reciprocity. And they cannot repay you. So over this dinner table, people hear Jesus sharing these two introductory stories about dinners. And someone says, man, those are good stories, Jesus. Those are good stories. Like, it's really going to be great, isn't it, when we eat at the feast in the kingdom of God. And then Jesus comes to the big one. Like, these first two stories have just been the warm-up act. Here's the main show. A certain man was preparing a great banquet, and he invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servants to tell those who had been invited, come, for everything is all ready. But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, I just bought a field. I must go see it. Please excuse me. Another said, I just bought 5 yoke of oxen. I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me. Still another said, I just got married. I can't come. I can't come. In Matthew's version, it says that when the invitations went out, they took it lightly. They took it lightly. As if this wasn't the best thing in the world I could ever been invited to. As if, I might have gone if there wasn't something better going on. But there is, so I'm not. Now, I'm not drawing a direct line between that and Sunday morning worship and being a part of church. Not a direct line, because this isn't that feast. But it is the foretaste of that feast. This is where we come to feed on Jesus. This is where we come to have those hungers satisfied. This is where we come as a body to see the work of Jesus and to look for the work of Jesus. This is where we come to, as Jesus said in John 6, where we eat his body and we drink his blood. The truest feast, and it's just a foretaste. And I got nothing better to do, because there isn't anything better to do. And so it's a foretaste of what's to come. And it would be important, I believe, for the people of God to recognize this seat at the table that we've been invited to. So they take it lightly and they make excuses, and so the owner of the house is he's not very happy about that, and so he says, "Go out at once into the streets and the lanes of the town, and bring in here's these 4 groups of people again, and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." This is who God wants us to find. People who maybe in their own sense feel like they've got nothing to offer. People who maybe even just in their own sense feel their own brokenness. And Jesus, this is who I want you to find. This is who I want you to bring in. And so they do it. They bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. And the servants say, "Sir, what you have ordered has been done." I think these are important words. And there's still room. There's still room. So the master said to the slave, "Go out into the roads and the lanes and compel." What word do we have up here? Yep. And compel people. Compel them to come in, so that my house will be filled. The heart of our Father, is that his house would be filled. I have this picture. Might happen in your house. It happens in our house now and again, and I think it happens in lots of houses. And you probably see scenes in different stories of it happening, where the meal's ready, right? And how many people are we expecting? 8. So we set the table for 8, and we have 8 chairs, we have 8 plates, we have 8 sets of silverware, we have 8 glasses. Everything is set for 8. And wouldn't you know it, Mary brought her boyfriend Bob. Well, we weren't expecting Bob. Like, what's Bob doing here? What are we going to do with Bob? We're going to leave him waiting in the living room. Like, sorry, Bob, there's not a place for you at the table. Maybe you can wait on the porch. Maybe you can no, you get this picture of everybody starts to scramble, right? Like, we'll make some room. And so you move some chairs to the left, and you move some chairs to the right, and you move some plates, and you squeeze in a place for Bob, because there's a place for Bob at this table. That's a good picture, isn't it? Like people making room. You know, you can there's a thing here about association and who we're willing to be associated with. There are stories of churches, and maybe you know these stories, but there are stories of churches where there have been people who, it was their church. This is our church. And there were other people that came in, and they had the thought, or they actually said out loud, what are they doing here? What are they doing here? Or even worse, they don't belong here. If you were ever a person that looked around and said, oh, they don't belong here, it's probably you that don't belong here, right? Because as I read the story, there just isn't anyone that doesn't belong. So who are we in this story? Well, I know who I am in this story. I'm one of the people that someone went out and found and said, come. Come because everything's ready. And so I did. So I came. But then once I came, I also became one of those persons to whom the owner of the house said, will you go? Not leave, but will you go? Go down the side streets, go down the alleys. Would you go look for others that belong here? Because I want my house to be filled. The beauty of Jesus and the beauty of the stories that we read in the Gospels is he just never runs out, right? Like he goes to a wedding banquet, and they ran out of wine, but he didn't. Like there was always more wine. He never ran out of bread. He never ran out of water. He never runs out. There's so much mercy to go around. So much life to go around. Friends, I would love for us as a church, just as people around the table, can we hear that instruction from our Father? Find the poor, the lame, the crippled. Find those who Pastor, if you ever want to build that building, you better start to find some rich people. We're not looking for rich people. We're not. Free Methodists have never looked for rich people. That's why we're so poor. But that's okay. That's okay. Because our Father's rich. Our Father's rich, and he never runs out.